Hello and welcome back to Teacher Gender's podcast. Have you ever felt like you were standing in front of a door leading to everything you ever wanted, but you couldn't find the key? Or maybe you felt like you didn't even deserve to open it. We talk a lot about breaking barriers and overcoming obstacles. But what if the biggest barrier, the highest wall, the most secure lock, is the one we build inside our own minds? Today, I want to tell you a story about living beyond those limits. It's a story about a man named Harry. Harry wasn't a thrill seeker or an adventurer. In fact, he was the opposite. He was a man of routines. He worked as an archivist in a vast, quiet library, his days filled with the scent of old paper and the soft rustle of turning pages. He found comfort in order, in cataloging the stories and histories of others. His own life, by contrast, felt like a book with blank pages, safely stored on a shelf where no one would ever read it. Harry's secret passion was mountains, not climbing them, of course. That was for other people who were braver, stronger, and more alive. No, Harry's passion was painting them. In his small apartment, canvases were stacked against the walls, each one a breathtaking landscape of soaring peaks, misty valleys, and skies ablaze with sunrises he had only ever seen in photographs. He had a gift. His brush strokes could capture the soul of a mountain, but no one had ever seen them, not a single soul. His limit was a voice in his head, a constant nagging whisper that said, "You're an archivist, not an artist. Who are you trying to fool? If you show these to anyone, they will laugh. You fail." So he kept his world small and safe, locked away with his paintings. One day, a new collection of old journals was donated to the library. One of them belonged to an elderly woman who had spent her life as a botanist in Himalayas. Her entries weren't just scientific observations. They were love letters to the mountains. She wrote about the resilience of tiny flowers that grew in the cracks of harsh rock, blooming defiantly against all odds. One entry, in particular, stopped Harry in his tracks. She wrote, "The mountain doesn't care if you are an expert, climber, or a novice. It does not judge your strength or your fear. It simply is. The only dialogue that truly matters is the one between you and the voice in your own head that tells you to turn back." Those words echoed in his mind for days. He began to see his fear not as a solid wall, but as a persistent echo, a voice he had been listening to for so long. He'd mistaken it for the truth. Fueled by a spark he didn't know he had, Harry did something completely out of character. He booked a ticket, not to the Himalayas, but to a small, quiet mountain range a few hours away by train. He packed his usual comfortable clothes, but at the last minute, he also packed a small, portable easel and a set of pins. He didn't know why. It felt both terrifying and necessary. When he arrived, the sheer scale of landscape was overwhelming. The air was crisp and thin. The silence wasn't empty like the library. It was full, humming with life. He found a trail and began to walk. The voice was there, louder than ever. "You're going to get lost. You're not fit enough. Go back to the safety of your books." He almost did. He stopped, his heart pounding, his hands trembling. But then he remembered the botanist's words. He looked around, not at the giant peak in the distance, but at the ground beneath his feet. He saw a tiny purple flower no bigger than his thumbnail, pushing its way through a fissure in the rock, resilient, defiant. He took a deep breath, and then another step. He decided not to conquer the mountain. His goal was simply to be with it, to listen to it instead of the voice in his head. He walked for hours, finding a rhythm. He didn't go so far, but he went further than he ever thought he could. Finally, he found a small clearing with a view of the sun setting behind the peaks, painting the sky in strokes of orange, pink, and gold. It looked just like one of his paintings, only this was real. He could feel the breeze, smell the pine, hear the warmth breathing around him. Without thinking, he unpacked his easel. His hands, which had been trembling with fear, were now steady with purpose. He didn't paint for an imaginary audience that would judge him. He didn't paint for praise or recognition. He painted because he was finally there. He painted the real sky, the real mountains, the real feeling of being alive and present. It wasn't his most technically perfect painting, but it was his most honest. When he returned home, something inside him had shifted. The apartment felt different. The canvases leaning against the wall no longer looked like the hidden secrets of failure. They looked like invitations. The following week, he walked into a small low gallery carrying the painting he'd made on the mountain. The voice of fear was still there, but it was just a whisper now, drowned out by the memory of the wind and the sight of that tiny, resilient flower. Whether the gallery accepted his painting or not didn't seem to be the point anymore. The victory had already been won. It was won on that mountain trail. With each step he took after he chose to stop listening to the voice that told him he couldn't. He had stepped beyond his self-imposed limit. He had started to live. Harry's story isn't about becoming a world-famous painter or a legendary mountaineer. It's about realizing that the cage we live in is often of our own making. Our limits are the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and what we are capable of. The journey of self-discovery and breaking free from our own mental chains is a timeless one. It's a truth that echoes in the wisdom of many ancient teachings. The Buddha, in his profound understanding of the human mind, left us with guidance that feels as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago. As you reflect on Harry's journey, and perhaps your own, consider these words. First, the mind is everything. What you think you become. Harry thought he was just an archivist, and so he was. When he started to think of himself as someone who could try, who could take one more step, his reality began to change. Second, there is no path to happiness. Happiness is the path. Harry thought happiness was a destination, a successful art show perhaps, but he found true joy and freedom on the path itself, in the simple act of walking and painting on the mountain, for no other reason than to experience it. And finally, a thought to carry with you yourself as much as anybody in the entire universe deserved your love and affection. Living beyond limits begins with giving yourself permission to try, permission to fail, and the grace to believe that you are worthy of the life you dream of. So, what is the mountain you're facing, and what is the voice telling you to turn back? Maybe, just maybe, it's time to listen to something else.